Amen. But for God's grace. Happy anniversary, brother. I love you immensely. You already know. I am delighted to be with my Baltimore family. I honor God in all the ways that God is present today. To honor the Bishop of Jurisdiction 4, Bishop Harris Thomas and Thomas Harris, sorry. And I'm just excited to share with my family. This is family. I feel right at home in Baltimore, and I can't wait until I can be in the city with you and hug your neck again. To my brother Sam, Reverend Sam Offer, thank you for that incredibly gracious introduction. It is a mutual love affair, and I feel equally as blessed by you as you have been by me. I'm grateful. Pastor Washington, 8 years is a long time, and I might not have said that before I started pastoring, but bless your heart for everything you are and everything you've been to not just the Baltimore family, but to the Unity Fellowship Church movement and to all the people that you bless in the world. Thank you. 8 represents new beginnings. It represents sacrifice, and it represents victory. And I'm so delighted to say that you are all of those things. You are always beginning again. You have made incredible sacrifice, and we are here to celebrate you as victorious in your role as pastor. I'm going to get to it and not be with you long. I was led to um, bring you a message today from the Gospel according to Matthew, the second chapter. I'm going to just read the first 2 verses. It's the Gospel according to Matthew. I'm reading from the New Revised Standard Version, and it reads as follows. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to worship him," or to pay him homage. Amen. I was studying ever since my brother asked me to be the speaker for today. And I went a lot of places in my study, and somehow I landed on this part of the Christmas story. And I thought, this is interesting, but I want to preach for just a few moments from the subject, wise men do it anyhow. Wise men do it anyhow. The Christmas story is often referred to as the greatest story ever told. It is the story about the birth of Jesus. And though we typically only focus on the main character in the story, Jesus' story is intertwined with so many other people's stories. There are other characters that play a significant role. And it just goes to show you that none of us make it here or become who we are by ourselves, not even Jesus. So today, as I celebrate the pastorate and leadership of the Reverend Dr. Jamie Washington, I want to focus on the wise men. As I celebrate him, the wise men stick in my spirit because, like Pastor Washington, they taught us to do it anyhow. We meet the wise men for the first time here in this second chapter of the Gospel of Matthew. And I want you to know that you can search the other Gospels and you will not find the story of the wise men in any of the other canonical Gospels. Only Matthew gives us this account of these wise men. They are folk that come here in this second chapter to us, and we don't hear about them ever again. But what they bring, what Matthew tells us about these wise men is significant. What these wise men teach us is important. So they came from far east of where the baby Jesus was. And they came because they saw a star rise over their hometown that signaled to them that a significant event was taking place. We don't know a whole lot about them, but they were probably astrologers and or royalty. They definitely were not Israelites. They were not Jews, and they were not any of the immediate neighbors of the Israelites whom the Israelites had been at war with. But they followed the star anyhow. Why? Because the God of their understanding had assured them that the child that had been born was indeed King of the Jews. And even though they were not Jews, they recognized that this child king was being born of their God. And they understood that that made them kin to them, that made this child and them some kin. So they went anyhow. That tells me that these wise men not only had deep relationship with God, but they recognized when God was speaking. And when they recognized God's voice, they acted. Wise men don't necessarily do what's popular, but they always do what's required. Even when what God tells them seems foolish, even when it seems unnecessary, when it seems like it ain't got nothing to do with them, when it seems unimportant, they recognize that if it is the voice of God, they ought to do it anyhow. And so they followed a star. Wise men know that God does not need a book in order to speak. Wise men understand that God does not only speak in books, but that God is the source of everything, and everything else is a resource. And so if God decides to snatch a star out of the sky to guide you to love, then God will do just that. And so they followed the star to see this baby Jesus. I wish you would read the whole thing. It's a fascinating account. But the thing that stands out the most for me, and I'm almost done, is that despite them being of a different culture, despite them being of a different religion, despite them having a different worldview, despite their long and no doubt difficult journey, and despite it being outside of anything they had done before, when they saw this child that their God had assured them was King of the Jews, when they got to where God had led them to, when they looked upon love personified, they fell down and worshiped anyhow. It wasn't their practice to do that. These wise men were not of the faith where they would worship someone else's king, but because God said so, they worshiped anyhow. Pastor Washington, I came today to encourage you to continue to be the wise man that you are and just do it anyhow. Even when the message that God gives you to preach ain't popular, preach it anyhow. Even when you don't have the full support of the leadership team, if God has pointed you in that direction, go there anyhow. But above everything else, Pastor, I encourage you to continue to worship anyhow. If your health is failing you, worship anyhow. If your money gets funny, worship anyhow. When all hell is breaking loose, worship anyhow. Pastoring, preaching, and leading are important aspects of who God called you to be, but worship is your duty. Worship does not happen in response to anything else. Wise men just worship because God is God. Wise men worship God because they understand that they are created to worship God. And those who do so must worship God in spirit and in truth. I celebrate you, Elder Pastor Reverend Jamie Washington, because you are that kind of wise man, because your work in the church and your work in the world where you do diversity and inclusion work with all manner of people helps me to understand that you are indeed a wise man that is following the leadership of God. Even if you don't find it in the book that is our book, even if you don't find it in the popular voices of people, you do it anyhow. And we bless you. We support you. We lift you up, and we celebrate the wisdom that God has given you to just do it anyhow. May God forever bless you and keep you.